Hi everyone, welcome back to another video at Mark's Crazy Tiki Garden. The amazing tropical style garden, 10 minutes down the road from me. Today is an autumn tour on a beautiful day. Blue sky, a gentle breeze. It really is a fantastic time to see your garden, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the absolute peak growth, end of the year.
I thought Chris had peak growth, didn't he?
Well, maybe, but everything's as big as it's going to get right now.
Yeah.
It's looking fantastic. It's a beautiful day, and it's an opportunity to show you guys just what's thrived and, you know, things that we're going to look at changing next year and how the garden's going to develop. Things that have worked, things that haven't worked.
Definitely. So this time of year, it's a perfect time to enjoy your tropical style garden. The plants are at their best this time of year. The bananas here are absolutely colossal now, but it's also a time to plan ahead. We're talking winter preparations, some exciting plant ideas for next year, as well as the changes, evolutions that we're both making our gardens going forwards. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's go into the garden. So this is the big border, Mark, the big tropical border.
Yeah.
It looks awesome.
It looked like the Somme, if any of you remember last time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm 6'3". I'm not quite as big as you, George.
Oh, no, I'm at least 8'2".
You can see that they were cut to the base, and they are
now
ginormous.
look at it.
They are humongous. This isn't, the biggest one is probably right in the middle there. And it is easily 12, 14 foot tall, would you say?
Easily. I mean, even with your exaggerated measurements in videos.
I don't exaggerate many measurements, but don't ask my wife. But yeah, I mean, the loquat is looking fantastic. It looks like plumeria, which is what I always wanted.
Yeah.
Other than the temperature, because it is freezing, you wouldn't know. It looks so tropical.
Oh, no.
The Montbeliardii is again looking fantastic. This is my go-to red banana.
So this is basically a relative or a similar form to Morellii, but more upright, narrow leaves, and a sort of darker maroon plummy colour to it, isn't it?
And yeah, and so much tougher than Morellii.
I've heard that before in terms of overwintering as well as sort of actually growing.
Yeah, I love it. I've got a little tiddler that I got last year. This is the only thing that I bring in. It's my pride and joy. I bring it in, I mollycoddle it, everything else. I'll bring it in if it's in a pot. The Strelitzia can come in. But this, I mean, having had at one point 28 Morellii that all died because they rotted at the base.
Because the greenhouse failed to be the right temperature, shall we say? There was a technical error.
A panel fell off and I didn't notice it. So,
But I mean, circumstances aside, I guess really your garden's going through a similar evolution to mine, where you start off with all these, really big, tender exotics like, the Colocasia, like Thai giant, things like that. And gradually over time, you realise that a lot of the tougher, hardier, easier to go varieties produce a similar effect, are a lot easier, and you can leave them in the ground. And then so have a few sort of crucial, really amazing, stunning plants like this to absolutely set it off, don't you?
Absolutely, and that is the set-off point. And I think the thing is, I mean, I've been through the evolution of having loads of tender plants that you have to bring in to now just having the one, which is the statement plant, and in what is really a statement area. So it's front, right, and centre. It's right by the path. It's plain to see. And the backdrop of everything else is just those fresh rollers that have come out of the Musa basjoo, which again, as you can all see, I was walking around in there in May. In what I described as the Somme, and it's really bounced back.
Oh, definitely. I know I'll put some clips over the top of this showing what it looked like when I last visited. That was sort of late spring, early summer, I think, from memory. I mean, since then, elephant in the room, you did have another guest, didn't you? Who did you invite into the garden, Mark? Oh dear, we're not mentioning his name, are we?
I'm sorry.
Out of all the people he could have asked here.
Is that Yorkshire Chris? Yeah, it's Yorkshire Chris, the one and only.
I'm all I can say is I'm sorry.
Wow.
It was, I cheated on you, I felt dirty. Was it worth it?
All the days that we've been spending, I hope this dream is never ending. Oh, feels like a fairy tale.
Your peak growth tour as well. It
was a hiccup in our relationship, and I'm hoping that we can get things back on track.
We'll try. But this video, as much as it might include a little bit of banter, I do want to have plenty of practical tips for people and inspiration, so not everyone switches off as we're laying into each other.
No.
But looking at this border, we'll sort of go back to the plants for a bit. At the front here, Persicaria, we talked about that loads, red dragon, Although, despite being called red, in shade, they tend to go a little bit greener, but still a cool looking plant.
Yeah, this has had the Chelsea chop twice.
Yes, and it's still come back.
still over 6 foot.
Yeah.
You can easily propagate it. It fills space. I bought this as 2 plants 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I now chuck it away.
Oh, you can just chop it and chuck it.
You can just chop it up. I actually, a couple of years ago, I took handfuls of it and chopped it up amongst this border.
Yeah.
And it's sown and grown, and that now fills space.
Got
that's something that we will get onto about my unhappiness in this space.
Yeah.
And things that I'm going to look to change.
Got you.
But it's fab. It fills space. It softens edges. It probably could do with being a little bit less of a presence, but it is what it is.
I guess the take-home point is Musa basjoo, once it gets to 2 or 3 years old, very tough. Even after a cold winter, coming from the ground, you get this amazing height. Now, you don't really want much more height than that. It's incredible. You've got the loquat there. That's an evergreen tree. So again, you've got that sort of lush Bali-esque look, which I know you were going for.
Yes.
That's going to look great even through winter, hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And my original plan was that I have 2 on either side of the path, and these 2 canopies have now started to mould together. So my plan with this pathway was originally for it to look like a walk through a really Balinese, Javanese walkway, like you're in a hotel.
Yeah, so showing people just through here.
And I think it looks fab.
That is a lovely walkway. I mean, just look as you're walking through here. I should say I'm crouching down to get under all the bananas, but that really is such an impressive view.
And I've got some ginger flowering down here, which you've just walked into the back of.
Oh, wow, look at that. Is that Devon cream by any chance?
I don't have a clue.
Well, if people were doubting whether these videos are scripted or not, there's your answer.
Not a clue.
It's a beautiful ginger, and I guess I should know the answer to it. I've got it on the tip of my tongue, but we'll leave it there. I'm sure someone will chime in the comments below, won't they? I'm
sure they will.
But one thing with gingers, a top tip for these, quite a lot of people message me about getting them to flower, and I've got to say, they take time, don't they?
Oh,
you need to live them a few years to actually, guarantee getting flowers off them.
This is this particular plant's 2nd or 3rd year in the ground.
Right, okay.
This plant here has been in the ground for 4 years.
Got you.
We just haven't had the heat
No.
for it to flower, and it won't flower. And I personally don't rate gingers for anything other than their foliage.
Controversial. I would say 3 top tips. Firstly, time. Secondly, they need a lot of heat. If you live in a cooler area, if you're planting shade like this, potentially dig it up, start off in a greenhouse or polytunnel, then put it out. And when it comes to the growing season, plenty of water, plenty of fertiliser. The more the better, really. And hopefully you'll get a ginger to flower. But
I think the other thing to say is that for people that garden in the style that I garden, I don't dig them up.
Yes.
I don't dig them up. I don't heat them to get them going.
Yeah.
I just let them do it their own thing.
Got you.
One thing that I do, which is I do as an annual, is if you look down by your side there, George, these are shop-bought Colocasia escalators.
Oh, yeah, they're these. Oh, yeah.
This side and that side.
Yeah.
And they are 3 or 4 foot tall, and they were bought as 60, 70 pence bulbs.
That's really interesting.
A supermarket in Grimsby.
All the supermarkets are available.
Yes, they are. It was an Asian. It was an Asian supermarket. It was, just shop bought.
That's interesting. So, did you start these inside? Were they in a greenhouse or?
So I did what people refer to as the baggy method, which was.
I believe Chris, your good friend Chris, is a big fan of that. Isn't
Sorry,
he?
who was that again?
Sorry, I mentioned his name. So tell me how you get them started, Matt.
Stick it in a bag, a breath of fresh air. Which you are not, my friend. A breath of fresh air, and that's enough moisture in the bag. Yeah. Seal it over, stuck in the greenhouse, heat, warmth, and it just gets going. Then they go into soil, really heavily watered from the base, and they've done brilliantly.
That is cool.
They fill loads of space, and if you look, they've actually done so much better than Pink China and Gaogliogensis, I think is the
I'll tell you
term.
what, you're the first person on video to actually attempt the pronunciation, so I'll give you a solid 7 out of 10 for that.
Thank you very
well
much.
Done.
Other than that, the Pleoblastus has done really well. This has started to soften edges.
Look at those edges.
Tradescantia, I can't remember the name of it. Maiden's Blush, maybe.
I do like that, actually. That looks almost like a sort of, like a variegated ivy, but it's a little bit more tropical
and
looking.
It stays in the ground every year, and I was very fortunate that someone on Instagram, they stuck some in the post for me, and it turned up like 4 or 5 days after it turned up, and it was like mush, and I thought, oh God, this is knackered.
But
Stuck it in, and you know what? It's absolutely gone, and it's now all around the garden, and it looks fantastic.
I do really like that, actually, I've got to say.
Yeah, if a couple of handfuls go missing, I'll know where they've gone.
Oh, I'll be taking full plants, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
So let's head around a bit more, and I think we need to have a look at the palm border and see what's going on there.
Yes. I'll move my vegetation, George, don't worry. Royalty's
That's all right,
here.
I can squeeze past.
Oh, God. So,
the cacophony of sausages in the background, can't you?
yeah, the extra sausages to the party.
Which I should say, for anyone who hasn't watched the previous videos, they are the name, or the reason for the name being Sausage Party, aren't they?
Yes, pretty
There's
much.
nothing more untoward.
Well, not that's not suitable for this video anyway.
So,
Under the jungle hut,
Yes.
looking into the quagmire of foliage, we've got tetrapanax that's
Yeah.
self-seeded,
It's
grown and
popped up
spread.
everywhere, hasn't it? Yeah.
Popped up everywhere. And I have 40 young plants that I pulled out at the start of the year. And they've regrown even from there, and
Yeah.
they're now 3 or 4 foot tall. We've got Canna Musifolia, we've
Yeah.
got Canna Red Russian, we've got
there's everything in here, isn't there?
it's just and the idea is that my
Just look at this, it's crazy.
my son absolutely loves running through here, and just
I mean, he's probably still in there now, isn't he?
I think
in
we've
the
not
jungle.
seen him in a couple of days, to be fair. But yeah,
It's just absolute madness, man.
It's exactly what I wanted it to be. It's a bit mad. It's really, really lush and dense. And it's just, again, you can look back, and sure, George will add more pictures in of when it was completely barren.
Oh, it was just literally soil, wasn't it? Just
So,
bare soil.
Again, I say it again, this is proof that you don't have to mollycoddle these plants. You can bring them in, you can dig them up, you can overwinter them, you can do all that stuff.
Yeah.
But this is an example of the fact that you really don't have to.
No. So
If you live in the north of Scotland, that's not appropriate advice at all.
Yeah.
But for Middle England, relatively temperate, you can have freezing cold temperatures. Ground can freeze
Yeah.
for a week, and it can still come back.
yeah, it would take a truly exceptional winter.
Total
wouldn't it?
disclaimer.
Yeah.
There was Canna Cleopatra down here.
Yeah, which is not coming out yet
Which
this
is
year,
not
is it?
coming out. That has come back,
Yeah.
but it hasn't come back with any degree of
No.
You know.
So this is what I found. It's all right listening to people like you, Mark, brave, potentially efficient,
intrepid
tropical gardeners,
Yes.
say leave everything in the ground, but it doesn't necessarily apply to all varieties. So
Not at all. But then I probably wouldn't buy Canna Cleopatra again.
No. I mean, you've learned that lesson, and I've found that the Altensteinia I grew from seed have come up, reliably. They've flowered really well this year, despite it being a cool summer.
Yeah.
Whereas others, like Stuttgart and a couple of the more unusual sorts, haven't appeared. So I guess you have to sort of ride that wave, be experimental.
Well, I'll show you my Stuttgart in a moment, George.
Oh dear. Oh, it's like the Schefflera and Macaphylla all over again, isn't it?
Yeah.
There is another plant in this border here that we really wanted to talk about.
Oh, yes.
A plant that's a little bit dangerous. This is a bit of a beastie, which can take over and has. This is Miscanthus lutarioriparius, I believe, something like that.
Very good pronunciation.
Thank you, Mark.
Certainly won't attempt it.
No.
But yeah, again, this is...
It's a monster.
It's absolutely ginormous.
So make no mistakes, if you want a big grass for your garden, Miscanthus giganteus is big, isn't it? 3 metres tall, 3.5 metres.
Yeah.
But this is an absolute monster.
I'd say this has got to be pushing on 6.5, 7 metres.
This is a plant that you can get it to grow to over 7 metres in cultivation. I don't know why I say cultivation because it probably grow massive anywhere, but
Yeah.
it really is a monster. And in fact, it's actually visually more of a bamboo than a grass, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know it's still deciduous, but just look at those canes on it.
It's really beautifully glaucous. It spreads like wildfire. If
Yes.
you've got the space for it, I definitely recommend it. I will have to try and hack into this
Yes.
year so that it can either be disseminated about, sold, or just not quite take up quite so much space.
Oh.
But
It's just, it's unreal how much it's grown.
Yeah, the design of it and the plan with it was that it was to block the next door neighbour's
I mean,
house.
it'll probably be doing that when it spreads into their front garden.
Yes,
right?
yeah,
Quite
and
efficiently.
it's done exactly what I intended it to do. So
Oh, yeah.
from my garden, I can't see their house. So
I mean, it looks incredible from here. I mean, just seeing it reach up, you know, it almost looks like a bamboo just towering over this jungle hut there. You've got that beautiful movement. Today there's a bit of a breeze, isn't there? It's a lovely autumnal day. I think it's a beautiful plant, but I would recommend using a rhizome barrier for it, because otherwise this happens and it gets everywhere.
It does spread. And and I think the other point is,
Yeah.
if there's room to spread, let it go.
Oh, yeah,
If
if
you
you've
don't
got the
have the
room.
space for it, and
Yeah.
if you don't have a ginormous garden,
Go in a pot, do you reckon?
yeah, definitely a
Or
well-watered
root barrier,
pot,
yeah.
root barrier,
Yeah.
or perhaps do stick to your giganteus and maybe understand that you just won't get the same height. But
Yeah,
I love it. It's
So do
actually
I.
one that you recommended.
I think we both bought it from Pan Global Plants in spring 2020. You know,
That's
one
right,
of
yeah.
my favourite nurseries, and somewhere I'd love to do a video at one day. And to me, it was more, well, obviously the huge growth, you know, anything that grows massive is a must for tropical gardens. But it's also these canes that, when they get a bit more sun, they almost flush a sort of purpley colour, don't they?
You're touching that cane very lovingly, George, I have to say.
I don't read into that, Mark. Don't read
Okay,
into it.
okay.
It's a plant I appreciate, and we'll leave it at that.
Oh yeah, Stuttgart.
Oh, yes, there we go. Mark and his Stuttgart. Look at that proud, smug face.
Look at this proud, smug face.
Yeah. You almost look like Jeremy Clarkson when Richard Hammond's crashed off the track or something.
I would never be quite that, what's the word I'm looking for?
Oh, I don't know, Mark.
No. So, yeah, I mean, some of the edges have started to turn, but the variegation in that is just absolutely beautiful. The
There we
orange
go.
flowers dancing off it looks
Look
really,
at it.
really
It's-
cool.
You've got everything, haven't you? You've got the leaves, you've got the flowers, you've got the height, the presence.
Yeah, it's fab. I
You've
love
done
it.
well, Mark. I hand it to you there.
Thank you very much. And
But
again,
I've gotta
nothing
say-
fancy. Oh,
This is the plant that people will be looking at in this area, isn't it?
nice dragonfly.
Look at that there. I mean, it's not real. People know that's just stuck on, won't they?
Hey, come on. I've paid him good money to be there for this shot.
Yeah, there we go.
This is the Paulownia
kawakamii, is it? Or
maybe.
something like
Yeah.
that?
It's a fancy one. I got it from desert to jungle.
Yeah.
It's its second year in the ground. I haven't coppiced it, and
Yeah.
it's gone absolutely insane. Leaves are ginormous.
I'm trying to actually see where it comes from, Mark. It's basically...
Yeah, it's a bit
multi-stem,
further
isn't it?
back,
A bit further back.
multi-stem, leaning over. So I think what happened last year is it went
Yeah.
into the ground. The cold probably killed off the main stem to a degree, and then it's multi-branched out from there. And I will probably cut it back a little bit to
Yeah.
kind of quote-unquote coppice it.
Well, it's coppice or pollarding, isn't it?
Yeah,
I believe coppicing is at the ground, pollarding's a distance off the ground.
Yes.
But I mean, either way.
I'm sure someone will tell us which,
Oh yeah. I mean,
but it
look-
looks fantastic. I'm over the moon at how big the leaves are.
that's not a dragonfly, is it, Mark? That.
No, it's not.
No.
No, we'll leave him alone.
Yes. So I mean, the reason you grow this plant is for these huge leaves. People might be familiar with tomentosa, which is the other, Paulownia that we can grow here. There's probably others that I'm not aware of, but
There's actually tomentosa at the back here.
oh yeah, I can see it
And
just
you
sort
can
of
see
popping out at
just
the back.
the sheer difference in size.
I mean, that is probably because that plant's maybe competing with the trees above the garden here, and
Well, you've got the trees, you've got the jub, you've got cord lines. It's
Yeah.
very densely packed in here, and I think that's certainly the one thing that I would say when we very first looked at designing this garden and coming up with the idea.
Yeah.
This was always due to be the palm bed, and I
Yes.
took advice from yourself, George, about
whenever there's a problem, it comes back to me. But when you're in Chris's video, it's all you that did everything. You planted the whole garden, you designed it all.
I strongly deny that.
Yes. Nah, you're at a similar stage as me, really, where someone actually commented this on my Gunra video, and it's something I'm well aware of. It's about editing, isn't it? You plant everything in the ground, you grow lots of fillers that like the Persicaria, that's not going to be there forever.
No.
But ultimately, you have to make some decisions. Some plants grow better, some plants don't do as well, and over time, your garden gradually evolves, doesn't it? So
Yeah, well, I'm well aware. The idea was that until these palms grow to a decent size, the plants at the front will take centre stage.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, the Phoenix palm died off last year.
Yeah.
That's been replaced by the Parajub, which
Yes.
is sulking well and truly.
Yeah.
But it's still with us.
yeah.
The Jub is very happy, throwing out new leaves, doing its thing, but it's realistically going to take 10 years before it's anything like a size
Yeah.
where you can traditionally underplant it.
Yeah.
And this space has been problematic for me for years.
Yeah, I mean, I've got similar spots in my garden, and I know a lot of people that do want the garden that that looks, quote unquote nice,
Yeah.
tidier, a more balanced aesthetic as the border comes down to the floor. And just going back to this one for a second, so obviously over here, you've got all this persicaria at the front. There's nothing stopping you, now that that's done its job for the last few years, you could rip that out, you could chop it down a bit more regularly, you could have some nice coleus at the front there, and you could really create a colourful, lush, neat and tidy border with just a few tweaks, couldn't you?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And to be fair, that's probably the kind of thing that I would look
Yeah.
at doing next year.
Yeah.
Purely for the reason that it's a bit of a change, it's an evolution,
Yeah.
it's a trial, and it's seeing if I change that, how will it look next year?
Yeah, but for the first few years, the persicaria, it's done its job, really
very
hardy,
much so.
really easy. It's filled that spot almost too well. It just looks fantastic. But I can understand some people like, a neater, tidier garden. They like borders which resemble a more traditional border, but with a few exotics dotted in them, don't
And
they?
this is such an awkward space
Yeah.
that it almost, it's you've got the height at the front rather than at the back. Now you look at these beautifully manicured lawns at Harlow Carr, where you've got the perennial borders, start off small at the front, work the way up to the back.
Yeah.
And they just look fantastic with that range of size from 6 inches at the front to 6 feet at the back. And here it's 6 feet at the front and 6 inches at the back. So we've not quite got the balance, but it is unfortunately a case of just pure patience.
So let's head through here, Mark. Which geographical area of the world does this part resemble?
Well, this is going to be going into Australasia now.
Yeah.
So this is an area which has very much been left to do its thing this year.
Yeah, I'll just head into here and show people around.
Yeah, so Phormiums are absolutely doing their thing. They are filling the space. Looks great, really architectural. I'm very happy with these. The hostas have really, really done fantastically this year, and lots of hardy ferns. And it's, again, you can't see the ground too much. It's, again, not great at the moment, but it's done exactly what I want. It's filled space. It's really looked fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that I'd just like to add to this, it can be easy, especially as sort of tropical gardeners, to be obsessive perfection in every area. And I know if you saw Simon Maybury's incredible Leeds garden, literally every square inch is covered in an amazing plant, and that is a benefit of having a smaller garden. When you've got a larger garden, you have to accept that not every single area can look inch perfect, but you've got a lot of plants here like the hostas, which naturally die down this time of year anyway. It's okay for things to sort of gradually, decline into autumn.
And in a couple of months' time, this garden will be unrecognisable to what it is now, because there will be so much bare space, and the ground will recover. Everything will have a really thick layer of mulch over the top of it, replenishing those nutrients that have been used in this year's growth. And I mean, you'll have stuff like the hellebores that they'll hopefully continue to look fantastic, but it'll be a different landscape in a few months' time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's chance to reflect, chance to think. And I've touched base before with someone else came round. I think we've glossed over it, but the Petasites ginormous butterbird that came through, that has really suffocated all these hart's tongue ferns. So we'll have to consider, what are we going to do with this next year, because this area hasn't performed. The Brassioopsis,
I can see that at the back there.
That's done okay this year. Probably could have done better. That, again, that won't have any protection this year. This will be left to do what it does.
But again, we're under these huge trees here, aren't we?
So it gets the protection of the canopy, which has already started to fall quite dramatically.
It has, but considering, I mean, we filmed this video Sunday morning, 15th October, I believe. The trees are unseasonably green, aren't they?
They are.
So it's been an unusual year for them.
But you've started to get, this leaf litter which is already filling into the crowns.
So I think we need to have this bit again, Mark. Let's go for this. What do you do to protect your tree ferns in winter?
Absolutely bugger all.
There we go. Well, that's not entirely true.
In fact, no, nature does it.
Nature does it for you.
This is exactly the grand summation of what will happen. It's this leaf litter in here that creates this little microclimate. That'll all stay in there, and it'll protect it from that really hard frost, and the irrigation will get turned off.
You can see it there perfectly. You've got literally the leaves just sort of entering a sort of funnel, haven't you? At the top of the crown there. I mean, if you don't live in a sprawling country estate like yourself with mature trees towering over you, then you can use a ball of fleece or straw in the crowns, can't you?
Yeah, and the idea of the ball of fleece is that it replicates that idea of the leaves sitting in the top and providing that much needed little microclimate. And
Definitely.
I did do that, and I did find myself you know, floating around at 10 o'clock at night in a dressing gown, sticking balls of fleece in the top of tree ferns.
Yeah.
But it got old quite quickly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just to give people a bit of balance, though, tree ferns, they are tough. And we both mentioned the word tough, hardy, you know, in our videos. But they are hardy to a point. They're not going to be hardy, you know, up in Scotland. If you live in a very central area and it happens to be a cold winter, it is worth wrapping them. So just to give 2 points of view, if you live somewhere that's a little bit more sheltered, if you've got these, you know, sort of natural overhead cover from the trees, a little bit of a microclimate, you don't need to do anything. At the other end of the scale, if there's some really cold weather forecasts and you don't live in those places, it can be worth at least wrapping the top foot of trunk just before a severe freeze, can't it?
If you have a singular tree fern in an exposed site with no cover over it, you'd probably be mad not to do it. I know that there's a phrase that I bang on about.
I don't think we've heard this phrase, Mark, have we?
Wrong plant is wrong. No. Right plant, right place.
I mean, and it says a lesser man would obviously take that clip and make some really bad meme type song out of it. But, you know, I think I've matured and evolved beyond that point now.
I don't think you have.
I definitely have, Matt. Definitely
I don't think you have. Wrong plant is right plant, right place. Right plant, right place. Right plant, right place.
I think it's all part and parcel of considering where you are, what it's likely to be. I mean, I'll be completely frank. If I found that we were going to have minus figures for 2 weeks,
I would probably put some fleece in the crown. Oh yeah.
I've got to say, I mean, instinctively, I've just zoomed in towards this fuchsia here. I do love this sort of like autumn, you know, image you've got here. And to me, autumn, it's such a great time for tropical gardens, isn't it? Because you've got the plants at the best, just about tipping over now. We've had that first frost this morning, haven't we?
Yes.
A light frost. You've not done anything yet, but that won't surprise people.
No, it will come of no surprise to anyone that I haven't done anything, and it completely caught me off guard, despite people saying that it was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I've brought my house plants inside, so the alocasia, colocasia, plants like that, but I've not actually brought my Ensete in yet. And I'm yet to protect anything, so I think it's a little bit, it's not necessarily too early, but we haven't got those prolonged hard frost forecasts, so
no, I mean,
I'm going to leave it as long as I can.
All of these, a lot of these things can cope with the light frost.
Oh yeah.
They really can.
It's just a dip to 2 degrees last night anyway, wasn't it?
So it's not enough to get excited about, in my opinion.
For me, it might nip the leaves of the Ensete plants like that, but it's worth that little bit of damage because you're chopping the leaves off anyway. Yeah. Versus having to plant inside for another month, they don't need to be inside, definitely.
People are bringing them in now. People are digging them up.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. If
no, not at all. No,
I mean, now is the time when you could start doing it.
If you don't do it now, you're going to have to do it in 2 weeks anyway.
Oh,
so, you know, whether you do it now or in 2 weeks' time makes no difference whatsoever. I mean, the guys at the Secret Garden of Louth, they're digging all their stuff up this weekend.
I mean, but theirs is a full-on,
mammoth task.
Yeah, I mean, Jenny and Roger, they've filled whole rooms full of their plants, so you need to start that early.
Incredible dedication, far more than I have.
Definitely.
And, you know, fair play to them. I don't have it in me to do that level of digging and organising and overwintering.
I've got to say, for me, this year's different to last year, because last year we held on with everything till the middle of November and I could just dig everything up in one go. So it was like the tender house plants brought in, you covered anything that needed covering in the garden. I brought the plants to the polytunnel because it was just mild until a really cold spell.
Yeah.
This year we've had a little taste of frost, so it's only really a case of
frost.
A taste? Did I say a taste? I tasted it this morning, Matt. Did you?
No, I didn't.
You're not a proper gardener.
That would be very strange.
You're not a proper gardener. We had a touch of frost this morning, and it was worth getting houseplants in because I don't want them completely knackered up.
No.
But everything outside, it can take it for another month or so, hopefully.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And looking at this tree fern gully,
I've got to say, I keep looking at that big one there.
It's incredible, isn't it?
That is massive.
And the thing is that you see these kind of specimen plants.
I'll just push past and look at this one.
The word specimen is bandied around.
Yes.
But I think they've just done so well. And these fronds have got to be 2.5, 3 meters long.
Oh,
and architecturally, they've got last year's fronds on, this year's fronds up, and they've got this, you know, everything in the crown.
That really does look beautiful, awesome. That. I mean, if I just move the camera a little bit, you can see that sort of dappled sun shining through it. Got these huge fronds. I mean, I hate to say it, Mark, but I think your microclimate and the way that you're growing them really is working well, isn't it?
I think it's just, I mean, I when I was designing the garden and putting everything together, I had the option.
See, again, when it works, it's all you, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I asked George for advice, and everything George gave me advice on has gone terribly.
Yeah.
But no, in choosing where everything went, and I did all my research and I looked into it, and you know, if anyone looks back through the groups and searches for me, they'll find all the questions I asked about how should I design it, where do I put all these things.
Yeah.
And I did look at it to the point of, well, I think they will be happier there. And they very well could have gone in a more exposed site where you can see more of them. And can you see them quite so well underneath the canopy? Maybe not.
No, you've not treated it as a specimen plant. You've treated it as a plant, you know, trying to create a sort of more naturalistic environment.
I've tried to put it where it would be in its natural environment.
Yeah.
And
just at the other side of the planet.
Yeah, exactly. But
No.
but I think that this particular specimen looks as well as it would have done
It does
if it was
indeed.
in Tasmania.
I love the sort of skirt of the older fronds there. And then you've got probably last year's that are just starting to turn to a slightly darker green.
I'd be really interested to know what people think about, because so many people cut the old fronds off.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know of many people that leave them on to the degree of naturalisation that I do.
No, I mean, obviously you do need a bit more space and you do need to be leaning in towards that aesthetic, but I've got to say, if you've got the space to have them set back a little bit, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, I mean, you can see there's one behind you as well, which I think is pretty.
Oh, this one, we looked at this last time, didn't we?
Yeah, which again,
beauty
everything hangs down. It's got 3 years worth of fronds on it.
I mean, looking up here, there's something else as well. That Schefflera, it's grown so much, hasn't it?
It's grown a metre this year. I mean, you can see the fresh green bark on it compared to the older bark, and it's absolutely gone for it. And it's had no special treatment whatsoever.
So again, it's that sort of dampness of humidity, and this is something actually mentioning Simon Maybury's garden again. He's got that really sort of sheltered, damp garden, and the Scheffleras are just rockets there, and it's the same for you here, isn't it? They're growing so much faster than mine have.
Yeah, and it really is protected. It's protected from the wind. It's protected from everything because it's so close to the greenhouse. That was complete accident because I didn't have anywhere to put it, so I stuck it round the corner and thought, right, that'll do. And we had both of us bought an Aesculus wangii. I don't know how yours did.
Mine's doing all right. I've taken it out and it's potted now, but perfectly hardy. It's growing really well. But I might let someone else with a larger garden have it. To enjoy it.
Mine died a death.
Oh dear.
And it was in that exact place, and I thought, right, well, I'm very unhappy about that. I'll stick that in its place, and I'm pretty glad I did because I think that
growth is amazing.
Well, in the next couple of years, there's no reason that shouldn't be a really decent-sized tree.
Oh yeah, it'll be starting to head that way, won't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're looking from the house and you're looking towards, and just having something on the back of the greenhouse that provides, it softens the edges of it, I think it'll be really cool as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I guess it's one of those things where I mentioned it in quite a few videos. It's easy to see these foliage plants. I know at the minute, tropical plants are really popular with Facebook and everything. Everything gets shared around. Everyone wants a plant. But when you see a plant that's a foot high as a nice foliage plant, it's not going to stay a foot high. These want to be small trees. So you do, and I know I've made mistakes in the past, but you do have to plant beautiful plants like this with an idea of what they're eventually going to grow into, don't you?
Yeah, and that comes down to, again, taking people's advice. And everyone's seen the little Schefflera taiwanianas in the garden centre, and they think that's a nice foliage plant.
I'll put it here next to a little fern.
But they grow into trees.
Oh, definitely.
And getting them to the size of this and then being forced to chop it back, hack it back, or cut it down because it's too big is certainly not ideal.
You want to avoid it, don't you?
Ideally.
So to me, I mean, when it comes to plants like that, they're going to be in the ground for a lot of years. Put a lot of thought into the positioning, and then you can use the filler plants around them to get that quick look like we both have. But equally, they're not going to stay in forever, are they? Whereas that
and
speaking
of quick look and not in forever.
Yes, hanging
baskets. Yeah.
Now, hanging baskets, they're not my particular vibe yet. I'm not at that stage, not of life, but just in my garden.
Yeah, I mean,
but I do like these.
Yeah, so these are, again, coming towards the tail end of the summer. And they are a combination of Lysimachia gold, Calabrachoa strawberry bells, impatiens, New Guinea impatiens, and then round the back here, which you may or may not be able to see, there's actually a Phormia, which is a sweet potato, ornamental sweet potato variety. Now, last year I had Thunbergia Black-Eyed Susan, and that grew up and went really well. And this year I tried the Phormia instead, and you know, I wouldn't do that again. I would revert back to the Thunbergia.
Yeah, they do look pretty incredible. I mean, just looking down there, yes, not every single plant is tropical, but you know, it certainly fits that sort of really overplanted, dense, lush. If you go to a lot of actual tropical countries, you've obviously been to a lot more than I have. I've been to France once, that's the extent of my broad travels, but they all have this really sort of over-the-top, vibrant look to them, don't they?
Yeah, and just having 6 of them, look, and that repetition and that continuity, I think looks really cool as well. And they are so lush. And again, we're coming to the back end of the year now, but the hanging baskets, by the way, one of your guys
someone asked about these,
So these are Tom Chambers Andalusian baskets.
Well remembered,
and they were discontinued shortly after.
I thought we'd have a little bit of helpful practical advice there, but
sorry about that. But yeah, I have contacted the company. They've said that I'd have to have someone make them.
Oh dear.
I then asked if someone could make them, and they said no.
I've got to say, you could actually, I mean, if you know someone who's a welder, you could easily get some obelisks and just literally weld them on, tack them onto a
they've got
basket,
like myself, they've got quite a decorative bottom. So if you look
at Chris's phrase,
if you look at this, it's kind of got like a little ball thing on the bottom.
Oh yeah.
So
I mean, you could make them, but
I couldn't make them.
No,
but I'm sure someone
either,
could. If you were that way inclined, you could definitely have them made. But they're really cool. They need kind of re-galvanising and all the paint starting
or a bit
to
of paint, bit of hammerite.
Several years old now, but
just need a bit of care,
they're cool. So Wollemi pine started to really go for it this year. That again has grown a foot this year. It's just ginormous.
Really...
And then, you know, the irises and the stuff that I initially put in just to fill space. Okay, it's not the right time of the year for them, but they are really starting to grow. So this year they'll need to be separated, they'll need to be divided, and a lot of these plants that have just kind of gone for it in a kind of cottage garden feel. And again, I've spoken about this before. Having a cottage garden design intermixed, and the mixture of plants. The choice has gone massive. The Nandina's gone huge. All of these are going to need to be hacked back a bit to get them looking a little bit. So we touched on it before. All of these things that now at this time of year have grown and grown and grown, they need to be kind of brought back into line a bit before the start of next year.
Yeah, so I should tell people, I mean, this video, I've literally just popped around for a few hours, haven't I? You've not prepared the garden especially. It's a little bit of reality, it's a little bit your thoughts on what you're going to change going forwards. And to me, if you're really going to lean into one particular season of interest, it's like the irises were early in the summer, weren't they?
Yeah.
You need to accept that later in the year, they won't be performing quite as well as you'd expect them to be.
No,
and that's part of it, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Round the base of not the dead brahia, that needs pulling out. But
is that your final decision? You're going to take that one out?
That's coming out.
That's the brahia just over there.
I'm not going to pay for one now to then have to overwinter it. I'll buy a new one in the new year.
There is an argument that you could leave it in the ground, wait longer, and you know, if it was out of sight, if it looked like there was a new spear appearing, definitely. But there isn't, is there? There's no spear.
My father-in-law is a avid gardener, and I can guarantee you it'll end up in his garden round the back, and he'll see if he can save it. I've lost faith on it. That it'll be coming out. So will the Phoenix palm round the corner that's not done very well, and there will be several sacrifices made this year. The ring on the right,
which is that one over there,
not a phrase you'll hear in many YouTube videos. It's really overgrown with oxalis.
Yes.
And out of preference, I would dig all that out. But brahia roots they hate being disturbed. And I've been a bit afraid of doing anything with that.
I think it'd be all right, just sort of surface level, getting the oxalis out, personally.
Yeah, it's just it's
I understand your reluctance.
To get it out.
Yeah. Sometimes you've got to be, decisive, haven't you?
Absolutely.
And that palm, even if it did grow back, even if there was a sign of a spear, this winter might do it in, and it's going to take years for it to come back like that again, isn't it? Literally years.
Yeah, and I'm a bit gutted about it because
I understand.
It's forced my hand. It's one of 3, and if I replaced it with something different, it just wouldn't look right.
Oh no, I'm with you. You've got to have groups of 3, and you've got to have a little. Even in a slightly wilder garden, you have to have that sort of structure, that symmetry. And I've got to say, looking across this view here, I think you've achieved it. You know, even in a year where we've both been quite relaxed and time constraints, with regards to our gardening, this just looks perfect, doesn't it? We've got the blue sky there, you've got the leaves coming out from the trees. it's a lovely time of year, isn't it?
It's a great time of year. You know, we've got that. It's quite warm now, where it was freezing cold this morning.
Oh yeah.
I personally am not one for the massive heat in the summer. I get too hot. And
likewise.
It makes it quite difficult to work in the garden. But this time of year is just perfect, and I think that, you know, seeing the sunlight dance off everything, and the plants being at the absolute peak of what they are, and you can
that Miscanthus at the back there, just blowing in the breeze, isn't it?
You know, the Montbeliardii, and you know the Bali umbrellas, and the monkeys hanging around there, and the repetition of globes, and I think if you do have the ability, and it doesn't have to be a garden of this size, but if you do have the ability to really think about your garden and plan it, and put some design elements into it. And again, looking back through the group 4 or 5 years ago, I was asking all these questions. How do I design it? And an awful lot of people said, don't do what you're doing. There's too much grass. There's too strong a theme. And I just thought, you know what? I've got it in my head. This is what I'm going to do. Went for it. And I'm really happy with it. There isn't really a great deal that I would change on the design.
No, I think it's done really well. I mean, can we just nip through, just have a quick look at the banana border again? There's just, I guess at this time of year, something I was going to do a video about, but I didn't actually have the time, is it's well worth just coming out in your garden on a day like today or any day and just getting a picture of each border. Because at this time of year, everything's at its absolute biggest and its best. Getting a picture of it now is important, because in spring you'll have forgotten just how big some of these plants are, won't you?
Absolutely. I mean,
you forget.
My frame of reference is your videos. So I'll look back at them and think, flipping heck, these have really grown and they've gone for it. And I think that we all kind of, a big tendency is we all kind of get caught up in looking at other people's gardens, other people's pictures, and having that kind of, you know, comparison and envy that we all do looking at other people's gardens. I mean, I look at Simon's garden and see how, you know, how well maintained they all are.
I was envious of having a small space when I saw his, because you can literally spend so much time in each part getting it just right, can't you?
There's a fella over in Liverpool. His garden is just quite compact. Everything's in its right place. Everything's perfect.
But beautiful,
and then you have this kind of space, and you're like, Christ, you know, it takes. You spend a day on one part, and you've not even touched the rest of it.
Oh no, but equally, I understand people will be envious.
It's first world problems. I know. I'm not asking for sympathy.
I think perspective is good, and that's entirely what I was getting at. If you take a picture of this board now, it's something to mull over during winter. I mean, potentially you can take any glasses in from, you know, wild and raucous parties you might have had over the last few weeks, but get a picture of the border, you can see what the plants are like at full flow. It's something to look back on in future years, yes, but in spring, when you're deciding about design changes, you actually know how big the Persicaria is going to be.
Yes, so you know how big it's going to be, and if there are plants that have, you know, they go down. I mean, in this bit here, I've got dahlias that I planted this year. I will need to see pictures of those to know where they are, because you'll see bare soil. You won't see the you won't see the coleus won't be there. The tradescantia will be under the surface. The rudbeckia won't be there. You know, so in winter, in a few months' time, that will be bare soil.
Oh, definitely.
So having an idea of where things are saves you from disturbing them, digging them up. Losing them.
I think it's especially important for tropical style gardens, because A, everything grows so fast over the course of a season, and B, a lot of things are quite late to show, aren't they? So, you know, at this time of year, just get a few pictures. Doesn't have to be anything artistic. Just wander around your garden with your phone, and that way you can look back on it. And when it comes to spring, all these things that we've both talked about with our gardens, changing it, amending it, editing it, you can put them into action, but with the knowledge of how big the plants will actually get later in the year. It wouldn't be a Mark's Crazy Tiki Garden video without going into your tropical greenhouse.
Which very much has been left to do its own thing this year. There's a family of wrens living in there at the moment.
We saw them earlier, didn't we? One just darted for me. One, not to attack me, just trying to get out, I believe.
No, they were trying to attack you.
Right, okay, you've trained them.
They've been trained on attackers.
So, I mean, that is going to create a bit of a problem. How are we going to heat this in winter with a family of wrens in here?
Yeah, it's a good question. As I've touched on before, this structure only gets heated in sub-zero temperatures for a period of time. It's double glazed, the doors get closed, and if it dips to minus temperatures, so like last night, dipped to 2 degrees, the door was open.
Right, okay.
I didn't even close the door. As you can see, there's nothing in here. You've got variegated monsteras, you've got Spanish moss, you've got orchids, you've got parlor palms,
Yeah.
All these bilbergias and different, you know, they haven't suffered for the door being open and having 2 degrees.
Definitely. I mean, my garden, I've got a polytunnel, which I haven't actually put up yet. I will put it up over the next couple of weeks. And I literally put plants like gingers, potted cannas in there, and I only heat it when it goes below freezing.
Yeah.
And even then, I set the thermostat on it's one of the BioGreen Phoenix 3s like you've got.
Yeah.
I'll put a link to that in the description below. An amazing heater. There we go. Look at that picture. What a beautiful flower.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey.
Thank you.
Yeah, I literally said it, so it's just frost-free, like only just. You know, I think as much as people talk about, well, let's put it another way, Mark. Gardener's World, last year, Monty talks about how he's going to have to cut down a lot of things, not heat things to certain levels. And I know there was a bit of a backlash to that, wasn't there, in the tropical forums? People saying you should do whatever you can do to grow your tropical plants. But I think we're both of the opinion that there's a middle ground, isn't there?
There is a middle ground. And I've mentioned before, my middle ground in this space is that the stuff that I have living in here is stuff that I believe can tolerate Floridian temperatures.
Floridian?
Yeah.
It's a new word for this one, isn't it?
And I have an awful lot of stuff. I mean, the stuff that's living in here is here because it's lived in here and because it's not perished in previous years. And there is so many things, I can't tell you how many losses I've had in here. And so the things that, there are certain plants that I won't even buy.
I'm not suggesting trial and error is the only way of growing it, but you do, you know, outside as well as inside, you do land on a group of plants which, you know, you can maintain with minimal effort, expense, resources, but get the effect you want.
Well, I mean, as pure irony, I have done the trial and error.
Oh, I know you're.
The plants
We've documented this journey, haven't we?
The plants that are here are the plants that have been proven to work in a reasonably heated greenhouse in the coldest periods, but only the coldest periods.
Definitely. So I know we've been in this greenhouse a few times now. People will have seen it before. If you haven't, check out the other videos.
Yeah.
Today, what I'm thinking is, can you show me your highlights of the greenhouse? What are the plants which absolutely stand out the best? And give me a couple of care tips on them.
Vanda orchids.
Yes.
Are one of my favourites, alongside Spanish moss. But the Vanda orchids are just incredible.
They really are stunning, aren't they?
This guy's currently flowering on a double flower spike, which is pretty uncommon. You don't see that very often. These guys just get watered onto the roots once or twice a week. They are looking bone dry because I haven't watered them in a while because I've completely
They do go sort of this grey colour, don't they, when you need watering? And they green up a little bit, don't they?
They just look incredibly unhappy, but somehow it's still flowering, and this is a thrive through neglect sort of thing.
Yes.
There's lots of them. This has just come to the end of flowering.
Yeah.
There's some here. This again has flowered this year. And there's a few that just kind of, you know, there's lots in the canopy doing their thing.
So obviously not everyone has a tropical greenhouse like this, I believe.
No.
You know, there's some peasants in the north of the country that can't afford this, like myself. But for people who are wanting this kind of look, you can easily grow some of these Vanda orchids in your house over winter.
Oh, absolutely.
And then bring them into your garden or
an awful lot of people will hang them off
Yeah.
trees outside in summer.
Yeah.
They look epiphytic, so to speak, hanging off the trees, looking fantastic. Take them inside over winter. They'll be really happy in a well-lit but not strong sunlight.
Yes.
And relatively humid, so a bathroom would be perfect.
Yes.
And people, I mean, there are an awful lot of people that do just keep them as houseplants and have hundreds of the things.
A little wren's nest up there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Inside that fern.
They've just been doing their thing. That fern's very unhappy, but I'm not willing to disturb the nest.
Oh, no, completely not. So let's zoom in around here.
Mountain papaya.
Yes.
Vascanella pubescens, that's really happy. It's going to grow too big for the space. I know it is, but the foliage I think just looks fantastic.
And you've still got a few years of enjoyment potentially, have you? A couple of years?
I think so, yeah. And if it fills this space, there's not a lot going on here anyway. So if it fills the space, that's great. I've got some new bromeliads that came from Portugal. Bought them on eBay from Madeira Exotics.
I can see that. Still settling in, aren't they?
They're settling in. They need to really not move for a good couple of months.
Yeah. I see you've still got some outside, haven't you? A couple near the Tiki bar.
Yes, yeah. So they are the Alcantarias.
Right,
again, they will come in pots, and my intention is to keep them in pots because I don't have any more room for absolute ginormous plants like
I've
this.
said it time and time again. That is a it's a beauty and a beast in one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fantastic, and they do get to this size, and I hope that they get to that size in pots, and I'll up-level the pots as things go. But
Definitely.
the two outside are for outside interest, and they will come in, but they'll come in the pots.
For protection,
Yeah, and these guys can stay out.
And then you've got the begonia there, haven't you?
Begonia,
Covered in
spotty
flowers.
dotty, and then there's another variation of it here, again covered in flowers.
Little dominoes.
Yeah, the foliage plants in here are what makes it. So the Philodendron Xanadus, they look incredible.
Yes.
Again, proven hardy for me in here.
So we're looking
But
down here.
You've got Philodendron gloriosum, Philodendron mammii, Philodendron melanochrysum that some guys that know about the kind of houseplant side of things will know of. I've had them in here and they've died. I don't even bother anymore. There's no point. And then Spanish moss, which grows incredibly well for me. I literally can't move for the stuff. I need to kind of start giving it away.
It looks
so
awesome.
much of it.
I'll have some off you in spring.
Yeah,
whether you want to give me it or not.
Yeah, well,
I've got
again,
some.
considering you're holding me against my ransom, I guess I best give you something.
No, you'll have a door open anyway for the wrens, won't you, sir? I'll be in.
The Bougainvillea as well is in full flower at the moment. That's done really, really well. It's just grown and it's happy, and this whole space apart from the Bougainvillea is covered in shade cloth, and that's intentional. That space up there for the Bougainvillea, we all know, we've seen it on holiday, France, Portugal, Spain. It covers those spaces.
And it just looks
white,
instantly sort of Mediterranean, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Bright pops of colour.
And that started off as a tiny plant, and again, this space probably isn't big enough for it.
So obviously if people want to know more about your tropical greenhouse, check out the previous videos. We are thinking of doing a winter special, looking in a bit more detail at some of the incredible exotic plants you're growing here, and as well as that, lighting outside. Some of the lighting which hasn't been seen on the video so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we've never quite touched it because George doesn't come round at night, thankfully.
No, I'm very wary even in daylight, Mark.
I'll have a police presence for when he comes at night.
Yeah, I've got the helicopter circling at the minute, but it does take away from the audio quality, but it's worth it for my security.
If anyone has any particular questions or wants to know anything about the plants in here, if anyone's mad enough to try and do a similar type of thing themselves, then by all means ask. I can go into details. I know I've touched on it in the past on things like soil types, soil makeup, temperatures, any particular plants or anything that I can try and offer some advice on. Then I'm more than happy to do so. I'm by no means an expert.
We'll pop back and do that. I think you've learned a lot along the way, and you know the best results come with experience, don't they?
Yeah, and I certainly have had trial by fire. These guys will come in as well. I know that we've touched on it before, but I said I'd never try. I said I'd never do them again. They're probably too small to overwinter, but I'm going to
keep them on the dry side. They'll be fine.
I'm going to take them in literally as they are. I'm not going to dig them up. I'm not going to take the roots off. I'm just going to take them in,
remove some of the lower leaves
off.
Yeah,
take them in as is. See how they get on.
So that's why I generally sort of say myself, if they're bigger than this, dry store them. If they're around this size, so you've got a shooter stem. That's the trunk there, which is sort of less than 2.5 inches, 60 mil across. I think I would try to grow them on just on the dry side over winter. Yeah,
and I've had them that have lived, and I've got two of them. I've got this one here, I've got one round the corner.
Yeah.
I wouldn't surprise me if one died.
No, you can try your best. They are a little bit hit and miss when they're this size, so don't beat yourself up if it doesn't work. But
you can, for the cost of it, I think it costs a tenner.
Yeah.
If I lost one, I'd probably rebuy one in the new year.
Yeah. It's something cool for a pot for next year, isn't it?
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, it's got the colour, it's got the look, it looks great in a pot, it fills a space, and for something that's grown to that size within a year, that's all right. It's not too bad.
And then when it comes to your more sort of permanent architectural planting in pots, Yucca, is that linearis or linearifolia?
That's linearifolia,
which is an absolute beauty. And then you've got aloe, or whatever it's called now.
They change the name every 5 minutes. But that again will stay in, and what I'll do is I'll take cuttings of it, stick it in random bits of soil. If it roots, fantastic. If it doesn't root,
I'm sure it will. It seems pretty reliable.
This seems to stay round here. This is obviously a very
it's going to get a bit of heat,
area.
Isn't it, from your greenhouse that way? Have a quick look at the Japanese bit and the plan changes you're going to make in this area next year.
Definitely this year, this is going to be covered, encapsulated, perspex on the top.
Yes.
And then plastic sheeting around the outside.
And crucially, you've actually got the materials together for that. You're not just talking about it like I do. You're actually making it happen, aren't you?
We've got it. I've invested in some perspex. I've had corrugated sheeting the last few years.
And 3 of the butlers will get it built up next weekend, won't they?
They're on it right now, actually.
Yes.
But no, that's going to this is going to protect this area, hopefully,
Yeah.
so that we don't have. And you can see this one looked this completely defoliated. It's regrown. It's reflushed.
Yeah. This is the problem. Whenever I talk about any plant that's borderline hardy, you're going to get some people that say, no, it's fine, get it in the ground, you know, it'll be absolutely fine outside. But the reality is they're slow growing if you don't protect them, aren't they? Like
Yes.
this here, it's not even opened this flush up, has it, yet this year?
No, it's not.
So it's
And-
worth giving it a bit of care.
It's definitely, and that is absolutely a lesson learnt for me. As
You've got to
you'll
try
know.
it in your own garden, haven't you? And and see where things go.
It got protected the first year, didn't get protected last year.
Yeah.
Learnt my lesson. It's definitely going to get protected this year.
And we've got this lovely tree here, which hasn't actually turned colour yet, has it?
No, it's
Interesting.
not. Some of the bottom leaves have, but this was very, very lopsided. Got it cut back. It's turned into one stem. It's now branching, and then the growth point died off, so it's branching again.
And doing what they do.
Oh, very much so, yeah. And this has been hacked into before, and it's already spread. It's spread all the way over here. It's going through this space, and there is a liner in here as well.
Yeah.
So it's an absolute thug.
It'll be fine, I'm sure. So, I mean, heading through, someone did actually ask me about your beautiful carved statues there, your
Yeah,
likeness.
he's rather large, isn't he?
How did you get them, or where did you get them made?
So there's a chap called Tiki who I found through one of the Tiki groups, who's based in the West Midlands. So these are carved out of a single piece of...
Is it chestnut?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So they are carved out of a single piece of chestnut. They're about 500 kilograms each.
Yeah.
He carved them for me. I had them delivered, and then I had to wait for a flipping forklift truck to be able to help.
So there we go. It's not really a budget garden tip for small gardens, is it? But
No, but I couldn't find anything that I liked that wasn't handmade and hand carved.
I understand that.
These will be here as long as I live, because I won't be able to move them again. So
There we go. So this border here, we'll just touch on this and just show people around the back. A sad change you're going to have to make round there. But firstly, more optimistic, what's going to happen with this border here?
So this
We
is going to
touched on
become a agave succulent bed.
Yeah.
So we're going to top up the level of gravel in here,
Yeah.
and then either in pots or in the ground, probably in the ground, I'm
Yeah.
going to get some agave avatifolia whale tongues, the really blue glaucus, because
Yes.
what I want to do, I want to pick up on the colour of the agave stricta, the Bessionaria and
Yeah.
the Berinda.
Yes.
And I want to carry on that blue theme against the basalt.
Got you.
And so I'll either have potted aeoniums and succulents, but this is going to be really chocked full.
Got you.
And again, this will be stuff that has to be taken in,
Or
not
covered
my
over.
fan,
Yeah.
or covered up as an absolute minimum. But
Got you.
again, for an area,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. So that's the plan for this.
Yeah. So although the plants are from all around the world, enjoy slightly different conditions, the overall look is going to be sort of blue, silvery, exotic foliage. which-
silvery.
Similar to what I've gone to in my sort of fire pit at the far ends. You know, eucalyptus, you've got yuccas there, you've got all kinds of low-level ground covers.
But planted directly into gravel really requires
Into
heavy drainage.
and with a shared sort of colour theme running all the way through it.
As best as possible. Yeah, absolutely. And if you have a area that is quite close to the house, you walk
Yeah.
past it very often, if it looks fantastic and it's really chock full of those alien succulent type plants,
it
I reckon
looks
it'd
cool,
look-
doesn't it?
It would definitely have a really strong look to
Only
it.
thing I would say to be aware of, because we'll be doing another video in about 10 years' time, when the avatifolias get 6 foot across and completely fill the area.
And that's fine by me. If they get to the size of 6 foot across,
You'll happily rip
I'll
out
be
some
more
of the
than
fill plants.
happy. Yeah.
Definitely. So let's just head round the back here, because there is a
sure.
plant which, to be fair, looks at its absolute best right now, but might be coming out. So I thought we had to honour it with this video.
Yeah, my wife's not happy with it.
Oh dear.
It's too big.
Hopefully people can hear us
It's
over the dogs in the background.
The only time I've ever heard that from my wife.
Wait.
But yeah, so you can see it's just about to start flowering.
Yes.
It's absolute peak. It's fantastic.
just show
but
people in here.
It's totally blocking a window, and because my wife's not able to extend anything on me, we're having a loft extension done.
Right.
And they're going to be putting scaffolding here, so it's probably going to come out.
Which is a shame, isn't it? But
It's a real shame, but
this one really has grown well, hasn't it? And I think it shows the value of, like we said in the past, microclimates going close to your house, nice and sheltered from the strong winds, and really is an amazing plant. But the good news is they grow so quickly, don't they?
absolutely.
That you can grow it again. And,
I think this one started off as a twig about 3 years ago.
Yes.
And the other thing is that if I cut that down at an angle, there's no reason it shouldn't regrow if we actually left the trunk in.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably still going to block the window, isn't it?
But yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll see. But either way, another example, as in Simon's video, of just how fast these plants grow and how much impact you can get from a relatively small plant.
I'm gonna fight to keep it. But
do what you can.
Any married man knows there has to be compromises.
Compromise is a dirty word, isn't it? But a necessary one.
Yeah, it's not a nice word. I'm not a fan of it. But
lovely Fatsia in flower here.
Oh yeah.
That looks beautiful, doesn't it?
Yeah, so that's obviously Fatsia
japonica, that one, the standard one, isn't it? Yeah.
And then you've got Needham's form polycarpa.
Yeah.
Next to Spider's Web. So it's a really cool little kind of Fatsia tribute area, so to speak.
Yes.
There's lots of different ones. Heavy shade.
Yeah.
Really close to the house, and they're very happy doing what they're doing.
So it's something I've said in videos before. Very easy to grow, very commonly available. You can get them at pretty much any garden centre.
When you're in the garden centre and you see this little plant and you think this is fantastic, and then in reality, this is a quadruple-headed monster that's 8 foot tall, and this is what they get to. So you have to give them
just
space.
Phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if you saw that in a pot at a garden centre, it would be probably 9-10 foot tall. That would be a fortune, wouldn't it?
It would be, and
growing for a small plant really is amazing.
Yeah, and this has been in place for 3 years.
So there we
in the
go.
right conditions, this is how big they get in 3 years.
So if you've got a smaller garden, if you've got a north-facing sheltered garden, a little courtyard, Fatsias are definitely a plant you don't want to overlook.
Any gardener will tell you that a garden's never finished, and this garden certainly isn't finished. Not having space for things and maybe looking at, is this working?
Yeah.
Would I like to change it? Those irises I know I've picked up on next to the Wollemi pine, they were a filler plant when they first went in, and the question is, have they done their job? Could something else go there that's kind of more tropical?
Look at those dragonflies, Matt. How much have you paid them?
They're on the payroll at this stage.
No, I mean, they are just sitting around doing nothing. Shouldn't they be clearing leaves away or something?
They're on a tea break.
All right, that's all right then. See, going back to the point, I think really this time of year, it's just a beautiful day, the perfect time to really take in what you've achieved so far, isn't it? Celebrate the successes, enjoy the planting that's worked. Like there's coleus stand there, they look great down, there's little pops of colour. The tree ferns, as always, they look splendid. But then also be a little bit analytical, look into details, think what you're going to change next year, think what you've learnt this year, and really look forward. Autumn, it can be a time of, taking things down, bringing things inside. But the other side of it is, with this tropical gardening, it's an opportunity to improve, isn't it, and look forward to next year.
Yeah, it's a time where traditionally most tropical gardeners and most gardeners in general will look around and think, oh Christ, it's going to be winter soon, it's going to be cold, can't go into the garden, spending all the time inside, not having the opportunity to get out and do a bit. And I think it's a time where actually we can say, right, this is what worked this year, this is what didn't work last year, and use winter as an opportunity to compare your gardens potentially to others or to where you want it to be, and do some research, start looking for your, if you do want the height of the Miscanthus that I've got, but you don't have the space for it, maybe think about digging that root barrier in, maybe think about trying to find if you can see it online, all the rest of it. And you don't have to spend all winter down in the doldrums that you can't get out into the garden. You can think about what you're going to do for the next year.
Definitely. Well, I think on that note, Mark, I'd just like to say thank you very much for another informative and very impromptu tour. It wasn't as good as Chris's video, let's be honest, Mark. You saved a certain sparkle and personality for that one.
It never was going to be.
We're more than open to different themes, suggestions, questions. What would you like featured in the next video? So let us know in the comments below. And as always, Mark, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for coming. Don't come back.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Mark's crazy tiki garden. We're still going crazy, aren't we now?
Yeah. I should say I'm doing this video completely of my own volition, and I'm not being held to any sort of ransom.
I was trying to go with something more sensible, wasn't I? Right, okay, that bit will just stay in, isn't it? Yes, we're here, back at Mark's crazy tiki garden.
He's come back. I tried to keep him out, but he's back again for another look round at the end of the year.
I said to Mark, let's have a nice serious intro. I could have some beautiful slow motion footage of autumn creeping into the garden, that beautiful golden sunlight, the fallen leaves.
Autumn's not the only thing that crept into the garden. George came too.
I knocked on the front door, Mark. I came in sensibly like a gentleman.
Okay.
But anyway, you let me in. Your fault.